Well, howdy, Kirk Euler back with you on this couple days after the governor announced that we might be shutting down the state yet again, further restricting people's travel, behavior, activities by instituting stay-at-home orders based on 5 arbitrary reasons. Nobody really knows how it is these reasons were created, who's in what region precisely, who's out of what region precisely, and yet here once again, as was my problem with the metrics that we had over the summer, here once again we find ourselves where all of us in private business, just going about living our lives, we are going to be, our freedoms, our liberties are going to be arbitrarily restricted based on a private industry's business model that we have no control over. You know, hospitals don't just sit around with empty ICU beds. That's not their business model. And yet this governor is now saying, much like he did over the summer, where we were being measured based on hospital capacity, he's now saying these further restrictions are going to be based on the availability of ICU beds. Well, hospitals don't exist to keep ICU beds empty. You see, the availability of ICU beds is a part of their normal service delivery model. As they're doing elective surgeries and all the rest, they're managing their ICU capacity to accommodate their normal flow of people coming in through all kinds of different illnesses, heart issues, lung issues, what have you, and then the elective surgery component. And so ICU capacity is just part of them normally doing business, but we all are about to face essentially, our own little Armageddon at Nusollini's sole discretion based on their business model. Never really understood that. But this governor in particular always says, we're going to follow the science. And yet he never shows us the science, does he? He says, we're going to have to implement curfews. Where was the demonstrated science behind the curfew? At what point did he ever lay out objectively the case that said, here's where they've implemented curfews, and this is what it did to reduce case rates. This is what it did to reduce hospitalizations, deaths. Never saw that, did we? As he's talking about these further lockdowns, isn't it incumbent upon him to say, here's what the science shows us. The science shows us if we do these more restrictive lockdowns, here's what will happen with case rate. You don't get to just say, Governor, we're going to follow the science and not demonstrate the science. So, I've done your homework for you. I want to do an A-B comparison. I want to do a side-by-side. I want to take the state of California, which you have driven into the ground single-handedly through your crazy restrictions and your incredible overreach of your authority as governor. And I want to compare it against a state where the governor understands what his role is, and that is to help productive people be safe and productive. So we're going to compare California with Florida. Let's take a look and start with what are the current restrictions in place in California and Florida and have been for some time. California, churches restricted, schools restricted, youth sports restricted, restaurants, gyms restricted. California, mask mandates in place, curfews in place. Florida, no curfew, no mask mandate. In fact, Ron DeSantis actually went so far as to issue an executive order prohibiting local governments from adopting local mask mandates. In Florida, gyms, restaurants, youth sports, schools, churches, all open. Now, the science, if it's there, would tell us that shutting down obviously is going to result in fewer cases, fewer hospitalizations, and fewer deaths, right? I mean, if we're following the science, here it is. Here's a perfect A-B. Let's take a look. New cases. This is through month of November up to yesterday. This is new cases for total population. California is the blue line. Florida is the orange line. California trending above Florida the whole time. Well, you say, well, of course, that makes sense. California, 39.5 million people. Florida, 21.5 million people. So obviously, California is going to trend ahead. All right, let's adjust it per 100,000 population. Here are your new cases over the last month per 100,000 population. Interestingly, we were trending lower than Florida for the first half of the month. We hit the middle of the month. What happened in the middle of the month? That was when the governor unilaterally shoved all of us down into purple. Placer County got shoved into purple. Look at what happened on cases per 100,000 since then. We are tracking identical with Florida on cases per 100,000. The most restrictive lockdowns in the country. Florida enjoying their freedoms and their businesses are open. We are completely locked down, shuttered, and being threatened with more lockdowns. No difference in case rate. What about deaths? California blue line, Florida orange line. Total deaths over the last 5 weeks. Adjusted for population, look at that. Florida was higher. Florida's death rate is dropping. California's death rate continues to spike and drop and spike and drop and spike. So, Governor Newsom, you French laundry eating, no mask wearing, non-social distancing, lobbyist rear end kissing, private business killing, private school kids sending, public school closing hypocrite. There is no science that backs up your assertions. If you've got it, show it. I've got the science. Let's see yours.